Okay, I wanted to share this because, I don't know, I feel like it's important. This person is reacting to a video I made stitching the woman who was trying to defend Taylor Swift, and her reaction to Joe Coy's joke about her at the Golden Globes by bringing up Will Smith's slap at the Oscars. In that video, I said, "Why did you feel the need to bring up the violence of a black man to prove the innocence of a white woman?" And this person says, "Bro takes things too serious." You're welcome for the view, by the way. And I said, "Nah, babe, racial dynamics are very serious. They're literally life and death. Even seemingly innocuous moments like this reflect and contribute to greater racial dynamics that are so harmful and dangerous. Demonizing a black man in order to emphasize the innocence of a white woman is rooted in historical and systemic white supremacy. One of the ways to change that is to take these moments seriously, dissect them, and to do so publicly, because this is a social problem." No one made you view my video or engage with it, but thank you for the opportunity to articulate why this was an important moment to bring up. Look, I can be right and also be sassy. I don't think I'm an expert on the subject matter, but I think that I have done the work to educate myself continually throughout my life, and so I do trust what I have to say about this. I would love input from smarter people, more educated people on this, but I just wanted to point this out because I think it's very easy to dismiss moments like that as just a random moment. But I think that dismissal is rooted in the systemic issue. It's a systemic issue for a reason. It's not just the government makes laws that oppress people. It is people on the ground, individual citizens, policing each other or perpetuating these kind of ideas, these kinds of moments that keeps the system going. It was making me think about the King Kong metaphor for racism, and so I went to look for somebody who may have articulated it better than I can. King Kong has been around almost as long as Hollywood itself. The first Kong movie was in 1933. And from its inception, it's always been loaded with some ugly racial subtext, ridiculous caricatures of natives, white men protecting a white woman from the savages of a giant, dangerous black creature from the jungle. This article is from NPR, by the way. You can draw a direct line from The Birth of a Nation, that defining 1915 film about the black male threat to white women, and coincidentally the movie that helped resurrect the Ku Klux Klan, and King Kong in 1933. King Kong premiered at a time when black men were regularly depicted as ape-like. It was during the beginning of the Great Migration, when thousands and thousands of black people were leaving the South to move to the nation's biggest cities. So in the King Kong scenario, it's the big black ape kidnapping the innocent white woman and everybody else having to defend her from that. It's that juxtaposition of black male aggression and white female innocence that is a very big key point in white supremacy. I also keep thinking about the Emmett Till situation. He didn't enact any kind of violence, but he was accused by a white woman and then brutalized for that, because nothing is more important in white supremacy than the innocence of a white woman, especially when it stands in contrast with the violence of a black man. If you think about white supremacy as imperialism, as colonialism, we know that when you imperialize, when you colonize a land or a people, one of the main strategies you use is to other those people as much as possible, and not just other them, cast them as animalistic or savage or uncivilized. And that is to justify the colonization. We're saving them, we're fixing them, we're helping them, we're improving their lives, we're bringing them into the future, we're bringing them into civilization. In order to civilize somebody, you have to convince yourself and everybody else that they are uncivilized. We see this happening in Palestine. I talked about this in another video I made about hair. I'm not saying that the woman who made the original video that I stitched is calling Will Smith an animal. But what I am saying is that she is using an age-old tool of white supremacy in order to defend her white woman fave. bring up the brutality of the black man in order to emphasize the innocence of the white woman. I also found an article called When White Women Cry, How White Women's Tears Oppress Women of Color. Comprehensive historical research explicates this notion of racial identity informing gender identity. While white women have been depicted to be the foundation of purity, chastity, and virtue, women of color have historically been caricaturized by the negative stereotypes and historical lower status position associated with their racial communities in American society. The problem for white women is their privilege is based on accepting the image of goodness, which is powerlessness. This powerlessness informs the nature of white womanhood. Put in simple terms, male privilege positions the nature of womanhood, while white privilege through history positions a white woman's reality as the universal norm of womanhood, leaving a woman of color defined by two layers of oppression. As Dyer further elucidates, white people set standards of humanity by which they are bound to succeed. As a natural outcome, when there is conflict among women, the norms under which these conflicts are managed are based on white societal norms. Then they offer a scenario. How might we assess the situation if we notice that during this conflict, a white woman was crying while an Asian American woman continues to talk without any noticeable change in her tone of voice? Our societal norms inform us that crying indicates helplessness, which triggers automatic sympathy for the white woman. Certain stereotypes of Asian Americans characterize them as unfeeling or devoid of emotion. Therefore, our norms also reinforce that the Asian American woman showing no physical reaction must not be experiencing emotion. As we piece together these observations to create the story, we might further conclude that the Asian American woman caused the white woman to cry without regard for her feelings. As shown through the scenario, the white woman's reality is visible, acknowledged, and legitimized because of her tears, while a woman of color's reality, like her struggle, is invisible, overlooked, and pathologized based on the operating standard of humanity. White women tears has almost become a meme in modern colloquialism, because with the rise of internet and things like TikTok, we can become much more aware of when white women are weaponizing their tears or their emotions or their innocence in order to get their way. I've seen countless videos where a white woman is being confronted or is confronting a person of color, and as soon as that person of color does something to make that white woman uncomfortable, or she feels like she's losing the situation, the tears come out. And that is a strategy. Whether conscious or not, that's a strategy of white supremacy, to cast her as helpless, as innocent, as in danger, in juxtaposition with a person of color. That's how she thinks she can win the situation, because she's been raised with the privilege that has taught her that that's how she can win the situation. But all it does is reinforce the notion that people of color are the opposite of innocent. So why, in defending a white woman who doesn't need your defense, did you feel the need to bring up the violence of a black man? Why was it important to you to specifically juxtapose those two moments? There are countless other moments where people have reacted badly to a joke being told at an awards show. But in order to cast your favorite as the most innocent person in the scenario, you had to bring up a black man who reacted violently to a joke. A black man who faced tremendous repercussion for enacting that violence in the public space. We saw Amy Schumer do her white woman tears over that moment. We saw freaking Jim Carrey do white woman tears over that moment. Will Smith got banned from the Oscars for 10 years and ridiculed in the public eye. Like, yeah, he was embarrassing, but it goes beyond that. Because as a white supremacist society, we are conditioned to feel so much more about black men's violence, just like we're conditioned to feel so much more for white women's tears. No, I'm not thinking too deeply about these things. These things are that deep. And the only way to make a difference is to talk about them. The only way to make a difference is to actively interrogate why we do and say the things we do and how they perpetuate the systems that oppress us. None of us can be free from oppression unless we all are.